Well, good evening. My name is Dr. Larry Force, and I'm a professor of psychology at Mount St. Mary College. And myself and dear friend and colleague, Dr. Jeffrey Kahana, were directors of our Center on Aging and Disability Policy. How did we arrive here? We arrived here with the support and the applause and the funding from New York State Developmental Disability Planning Council. They have been tremendous partners. They have been able to underwrite and fund our initial project, which was to touch the lives and train 1,000 caregivers of persons with intellectual disabilities, how to use mindfulness-based stress reduction. We know that we were doing a good job and continue to do a good job because they refunded us for this part of the project, which is focus on transitions. Joining us tonight are members of our team, and we're so glad you're here, and so many new people are joining us, and we're so glad you're here as well. But Elaine Sproat, Dr. Kahana is here. He is a professor of history and director of the Center on Aging and Disability Policy as well. Jeff is a tremendous advocate, historian, attorney, and a JD, and just a wonderful friend and a great partner to work with. Elaine Sproat, we brought onto the project as the project director 4 years ago, and Elaine has been able to help us stitch all of this together. It's been incredible. The two people that we have applauded privately and publicly are Peggy Pisano and Lisa Nathan. Okay, Peggy and Pisano and Lisa Nathan have come together with one unified voice, and as a result of that, from different perspectives. And as a result of that, have been such a value add to this project. Jeffrey and I and Elaine talk about this quite often, that with COVID, we had to pivot and pivot quickly, and we would never have been able to pivot as seamlessly as we did if it wasn't for the two of you. So thank you so much. Other people that need to be recognized as well are Vivian McCarsky, at the head librarian, director of the library at Mount St. Mary College. For providing support, and we'll talk more about this as we introduce Marcus. Gina Trank, a new librarian for us, and she's embedded herself in the program and has been very supportive of Marcus, and we'll talk more about that, of the role that Marcus plays now at the college. Just give me 1 second, Marcus. All right, I just want to finish this introduction. Keith Parfit. Keith Parfit is with the Epilepsy Society of Southern New York, and he's been a tremendous advocate as well. And we like to applaud him and his agency. The name of the format tonight is called The Voice of the Self-Advocate and Carers. And again, we would not be sitting here if it wasn't for all the people that we just talked about and so many more. We have a tremendous advisory committee, and Kaylee's Oaks is a member of that advisory committee, and she has been a tremendous advocate, and she has shared so much of her wisdom with us. Stacy Orzel, Lisa Carrara, the whole entire Proactive Caring Advisory Board. Are we proud of where we are? Absolutely, but there is zero way we could be where we are if it wasn't for the fingerprints of so many people. And when we started to think about this topic of the voice of the self-advocate and carers, two people just surfaced right to the top. And one of those individuals is Marcus Daitch. Marcus is going to introduce himself in a minute. He's had an affiliation with Mount St. Mary College for a number of years. And now over the last 3.5 years, he has a new role. And the role is to be a research assistant associate for all of the faculty, and working underneath our Center on Aging and Disability Policy. Joining him tonight, talking about the voice of the self-advocate, is Joe Munisteri. Joe and I met in an auditorium in Buffalo, and Joe is from Long Island. And when you talk about the motivation and the drive of the self-advocate, literally and figuratively, that drive took him to Buffalo. And Joe has been an incredible voice, and we exchange quite often, either on the phone or text. And he also sits on our Proactive Caring Advisory Committee, as does Marcus. Another person I'd like to recognize tonight is Corinne McPeters. Corinne comes to us as a graduate MSW intern from Columbia University, And the only reason she's sitting here is because of Sharon Mary Cohn. So again, and you've done a wonderful job. Corinne has now just submitted to me the first draft of a resource directory that I think everybody's going to like. And Ben, we will make sure once we finish all the details with it, that we will be able to provide you with a polished product. And if you could turn that into, translate that into Chinese, that would be wonderful. So I'd asked Marcus and Joe to join us tonight. And one of the things I asked them off camera, and Joe is calling in, and the reason he's calling in is because he's engaged in an activity in the rhythm of his own life, as he should be. So the fact is, you know, with technology, you can juggle things. And Joe, I really appreciate you being available. But I'm going to start with Marcus for a second. Marcus, if there's a way that you could just introduce yourself for a moment, and then I want you to answer the question that I asked before. Do you consider yourself a self-advocate, and why? And I'm going to moderate this, and then after the discussion, or not after it's all complete, I'm going to ask Lisa and Peggy from your different perspectives to give voice to this as well. So Marcus, please welcome. And if you could just give us a little bit of a snapshot of who you are and how you ended up getting here.
My name is Marcus Daitch. I'm 35 years old. I've had quite a long career, I'd say, at Mount St. Mary College. I've been a student. I was a student at the college from 2006 to 2012, and I graduated in 2012 magna cum laude. And there was some sort of hiatus, but I've been affiliated with the college pretty much nonstop. I've been involved with the Mount St. Mary College choir, and then I also started working at the library as a first an intern, then I'm now a research assistant at the library. Yeah, I am.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. And you have done a wonderful job, not only for our center and the projects that we're working on, but also for the entire faculty. You know, Marcus came to us and look, how is Marcus here? Jeff Kahana. Jeff Kahana and Marcus developed a relationship when Marcus was a student. Marcus graduates, he comes back, knocks on the door of the college. He's now surrounded with services from the Epilepsy Society of Southern New York. And the next thing you know, he's being trained with the support of our administration, faculty and staff, and with the support of Keith Parfit, and they trained Marcus in his job. At the end of the year, we were able to seamlessly transition Marcus over to our grants, and it was because of, also the wisdom of Elaine Sproat. I went to see Elaine and I said, this is what we're dealing with. We like to fix it? And she was able to fix it. So Marcus has been with us and he's going to continue to be with us. So thank you. Joe, if you could give the same type of, quick profile, and then I'm going to ask both of you direct questions.
A profile of myself. So my name's Joseph Munisteri, but everyone calls me Joe. I work as a support staff or support staff or community rehabilitation person with people with developmental disabilities, and here in New York State. I have 2 poetry books out. One of them is Butterflies in Space. I'm an artist and a light painter, which light painting is a whole photography, which is actually why I'm which is actually the thing I was doing tonight at a gala reception in Times Square. For it's called the Shah Shabbat Gala. That's an artist display, but I'm a self-advocate and an advocate for others. I've spoken at places like New York Comic-Con. This past October was my 5th year speaking at New York Comic-Con on disabilities, accessibility, and advocacy, as well as costuming and art. During the pandemic, or rather should I say lockdown, I learned locksmithing. So I can say I learned locksmithing during the lockdown. Yeah, I wear too many hats. So.
But let me circle back to this for both of you. Because our focus for this part of the program that we've been doing for the last year is on transitions. So as you were going through different stages of your life or different stages of education, and if you were to give people advice, because you've listened to many people, but guess what? Now they're listening to you. And if you were to give people advice to how to best navigate the systems and to be able to get where you are, because both of you are very, very accomplished, what would the advice be? And maybe Marcus, you could go first with that.
Okay, what exactly do you mean by what you said?
Well, what I mean is that when you were in school, did you know what was next? Who was opening up the path for you? Was it your parents? Were you able to dictate? Go ahead.
Well, I would say that I just went with the flow, and I didn't know. There was a little uncertainty on what was to come, but I got through it, and I got through it very well.
And what were the things that you were able to rely on to get through it? I know your parents are very involved, and are at your side, but what else?
Well, I got a lot of support from a lot of people at the college, and they helped me through my college experience and helped me get through showed me the ropes and everything like that.
And what about when you were realizing that college was coming to an end, and then you come back knocking on the door, now surrounded with services, support services? How did that happen?
Well, actually, my career at the college didn't necessarily completely stop when I graduated, because I went on to participating as I had done in my last semester of my college career in the Mount St. Mary College choir. And I've been doing that since spring of 2012.
And along the way, you also had agencies provide support for you.
Yes.
Raymond.
And Joe, what about you?
Raymond.
So the advice that I would give to anyone going through transitions, and this is general life advice, because I've been through, I'm part of so many communities, and I've learned so many things, and I'm always continuing to learn and jumping, and transitioning from one thing to the next. There have been times in my life where I thought that I've known what I wanted. There are times in my life that I knew what I wanted, and there are times in my life, like right now, that I have no idea what direction life is going to pull me in. But I guess a good way to describe it, or a good way to share that would be like this past New York Comic Con, when I was after my panel there, wasn't accounting for the fact that it was also done virtually. I recorded it in VR, and people actually showed, but I was expecting a bigger audience. I recently, shortly before a new writing mentor, who has been super encouraging, and afterwards when I was talking about it, he helped me reword the way that I was reword what I was saying, and that, the wording just from negative to positive, it has been super helpful. But also, he has this saying that, so he writes a book about a guide to writing comics, which is a guide to writing comics, and in the book he writes this one quote, which he says to everyone is the most important advice that you can get out of the book is enjoy the journey. And that's what I'm going to say, is enjoy the journey, because with me, with transitioning services, sometimes there have been services, sometimes there hasn't, and it's been all over, and I've had a really difficult journey. But and there have been times where I've been very upset about that. But also, if it wasn't for those struggles, I wouldn't have learned the lessons I've learned. So, and taking just to sit back, practice whatever struggle you may be going through, it'll pass. And then as you're transitioning, and transitioning is literally going from one thing to another. It's that spot in between. So it's just reminding yourself that it's that spot in between. And we're always transitioning. So yeah, enjoy the journey, I guess.
That is absolutely wonderful insight and advice. And I'm going to ask for a moment here, both Lisa and Peggy. And Lisa, I'm going to be talking with you tonight from both roles. Role of, you and Peggy being the facilitators of this proactive caring. Peggy looking at it from a behavioral perspective, and you looking at it from the lived experience. And then I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask Jeffrey, and I'm going to ask other people. This is what you're hearing tonight. And Peggy, I want to hear from you. I've heard over the course of years how at times you come back from meetings and you're very frustrated because of the fact that services may not be available or people aren't doing the right thing. Not the person that's receiving the services, but agent. And here we have Marcus and Joe on the phone here tonight, talking about the accomplishments and being able to look at this as a journey. From where you sit, wouldn't you want everybody to have this type of outcome? Everybody that went through your IEP process? Maybe you could just address that for a moment.
Yes, I think that is, the ultimate goal of school and education is to support whatever journey you're on. And so for those people with disabilities, that sometimes the journey just doesn't end at high school or college. They need to have supports after that. And sometimes the frustration is that and especially in today's world when perhaps budgets are tighter, sometimes the things that happen in schools and beyond don't translate to the next phase of development. And so I think the journey becomes a frustration at times for both the professional and the person who's experiencing that, because there's not always a sequential next step that sort of makes sense. So I wish everybody would have a as positive, and although Joe, you say that sometimes your journey has not been positive, but it seems like you're getting there. And so I think, it is important to enjoy each and every step, but also important that the steps are there to support you. And so how did you access, I think would be the question for you guys. How did you access the services and the supports that you needed? Who helped you with that, and what supports did you actually get? I think those things are kind of important. If you could answer that, I think that might help everybody else understand things.
Yeah, and I think those are really good questions, Marcus and Joe, because on the video cast are parents, parents who are trying to figure out the best way that they can be present for their own sons and daughters. And now Peg comes at you both and says, and Joe, I'll ask you to answer this first. Peg says, well, how did you access it? How did you know what you needed? And how did you go about knocking on those doors?
Oh, when I received a letter yesterday, and I was ready to, I kind of was ready to cry, because it was a letter from the state about one set of supports that I've been waiting on for a very long time, and I've been advocating for myself, that I just missed the qualifications for when I was 14. And I just received that letter, that the supports were approved. But because of that experience and of struggling to get, getting classified, getting services and supports through the school district, because my disability to a lot of people is considered an invisible disability, because it's not always visible, and but ultimately that will get down the path of learning advocacy skills, research, but also entering the field of work where I support people with disabilities, so that way I can help others through my own lived experiences. And through that, I've also learned so many other resources, whether they be community supports, whether it be supports that that are government funded, or it be supports that people, and what I will say, I guess, for me struggling to get those supports when I was younger, my parents struggling with struggling and advocating for me so I could go to a BOCES school, but it ended up being it was a really long process just for that, because the school didn't want to send me there. All those little things, really they played a factor in me going and choosing my field of work, because it made me not want to see anyone else go through what the struggle that I went through. So really having the first thing I would say is having a motivation to seek out what's out there, because the supports are also always changing.
And I think that statement is based upon wisdom. The supports are always changing. And, you and I met in an auditorium with Jeffrey and Elaine and Peggy in an auditorium in Buffalo. And since that time,
I drove like 12, 14 hours to get up there.
There. Right. And, since that time, now you've joined our advisory council, and, we catch up to you, and here you are on a video cast, being, I know. Joe sent me a text when I first asked him, and I told him that Elaine, Jeffrey, and I talked, and we'd like to have you come on. And his text was, appreciate you. Hey, you need to know how much we appreciate you and for the work you're doing. And I know at times it is lonely, and at times it is frustrating. You and I have had those discussions about particular agencies who will go unnamed, particular people who will go unnamed. but you kept going, you know, and
Yeah,
it's
and
never over.
I've been creating more supports too, like, and resources, like I've been creating mood diaries and gratitude journal.
Hmm.
Because I do a lot of art, and I was like, why don't I merge these two? Because I see a lot of artists that'll do prints and sell the prints at the shows that I go to, and I'm like, but I don't really see people doing, you know, I'm a big fan of resources and, you know, taking something and adding utility to it, and, you know, so, you know, that's something I've been doing, and the people that have gotten them, you know, have been incredibly thankful, and I've received feedback that's incredibly helpful.
You
So
know,
it's like,
when Joe, I have to say this, when Joe and I first met, next thing I know, I get a call from him that I need to call somebody out in Long Island from an agency because he was telling this person about the proactive caring program. And that's how, you know, we continue to you know, have these dialogues. And Marcus, I want to ask you now in reference to Peg's direct question. You know, the question was, how did you know, or did you know that you needed a particular service, and what process did you go through to get it? I mean, the Keith Parfits are, you know, part of your life, but they weren't always part of your life. They're, you know, he represents an agency that does case management. We have parents here that are trying to figure out who they need to bring into their child's life in order to help support. So maybe you could just talk for a moment about how that happened for you.
Well, I want to start with my parents. They've been very supportive of me throughout the years of my college career and etc. They've whenever I needed help, I always let my parents know, and we sought help. And I got pretty much everything I really needed. And I found out where to go to find the services I needed, and I was able to get there without too much of a problem.
So I think the common thing that I'm hearing between you and Joe is to never give up, to, you know, rely on family systems, to rely on agency-based support, but never give up.
Never give up. No.
Love it. Now, Lisa, both from the perspective of being, you know, you and Peggy being the facilitators, but also from the perspective of being an advocate parent. And you come to this conversation and you hear this dialogue between Joe and Marcus. What's your reaction?
I must say I was really listening with the meditation head. I was, you know, really in that vibe. I mean, so many things you guys have said have been, you know, amazing. You know, I'm hearing, you know, enjoy the journey. You know, it's a process. I'm hearing, you know, struggles will pass. You know, we're always transitioning, and that's so true. We're never in the same spot twice. What's the famous quote is, you know, life is like stepping into a river, you know, because you can never step in the same place twice. The river, the life is always changing. And, you know, that gives us a base to understand that as much as we want things to stay the same, they never do. And to be flexible, and to put yourself in a position for having support and being able to communicate that support can hold you when you need that. You know, I heard, you know, go with the flow. You know, we'll use a little river metaphor, but to be able, and you know, I think that's something from the perspective of the self-advocate, and for someone who's had to go through struggles, you have to be flexible and go with the flow. Otherwise, it can break you. And I think that's a really, really valuable lesson. I also heard rewording from negative to positive. You know, our outlook is so important. And, you know, it goes back to the thoughts that we have in our head, the thought loops that we have. What are we saying to ourselves? You know, make sure that we're coming from a positive viewpoint. So, you know, never give up, you know, looking for that support when you need, you know, being able to communicate the need for help. You know, these are so invaluable. And, you know, wanting to help others who have similar struggles, not wanting others to feel the pain, the same pain. You know, these are all, you know, it comes from a strong support of self and of love and of being not so self-involved. It comes from really being an observer and saying, you know, I can, like, you know, we can make this better. You know, all of us can make this better. So, yeah.
I love it. And my dear friend, Dr. Kahana, from where you sit, as you're listening to the dialogue of Marcus and Joe, and all the work that you do for others, what's your reaction, your impressions?
Well, I'm impressed by listening to Marcus, listening to Joe, by you, Larry, and by Peggy, and by Lisa, who shares with me that, you know, we are, as parents, I'm a parent of a son who's autistic. And so it's a different perspective when you're in that position. Of course, Elaine, who as the kind of architect helping with the grant, really helped facilitate some of this. And where does that all put me? I think it really highlights partnerships and teamwork and the way in which no one person can do it on their own. And the importance of finding ways to connect to other people. And in those connections and in that understanding that you can have when you genuinely share, you know, what is life like, you build opportunities. And I think that's really one of the takeaways, how important it is to have people who want to work together, because it's not something that anyone as a parent advocate can do alone. There are teachers in the schools like Peggy, psychologists who work, you know, to help kids get the right kind of diagnosis that can be related to services. It also relates to finding the right kind of, I mean, let's face it, Larry, what you've done in helping use grant funds to support Marcus's work has been critical. And it's also been lucky for us people. Lona McGinnis used to be the vice president of academic affairs at the college. I remember sitting with Keith Parfit and her, and Marcus came on board, and the state of New York funded training, education, pay. All these things were tremendous partnerships. So that's kind of where I would circle back to, how important it is to foster those.
And I think, you know, that is such a powerful message, you know, about the idea. And look at us tonight. You know, we started off, how did we arrive here? We had an idea we'd get here, but then COVID came in and we had to pivot, and here we are. Corinne, you have your hand up.
I do. I have a question for Marcus and for Joe. How have you connected to other self-advocates?
All right. So, I mean, call me crazy, but I did drive 12 hours from long just to get to have my voice heard. Or, well, at the time it would have been have my voice heard sooner, but I was just so upset that it was that because my region is always it tends to be the last region to get looked at for services. So it's like, you know what, let me go all the way up there and talk to, you know. But how do I go about it? I tend to drift from community to community. Like tonight, I'm in an artist community. I'm in Times Square. I'm on the 36th floor of, I believe, the NASDAQ building for an artist gala by the nonprofit is Shashama, that I was asked to present at with one of my artist friends. It was you know, I also go to New York Comic Con and talk about disability and advocacy and accessibility there. They've been super supportive. As a result of that, I do a feed per year for New York Comic Con, and I walk around the convention and I see if there's stuff that could be improved upon, and they take that feedback and they listen. So sometimes it's just about speaking up, but also it's, you know, shifting your mindset from complain, but that you're advocating. When you advocate, one part of advocacy is when you talk about the problem that you're that you're seeing, or the issues that you're seeing, propose solutions. And it's also about talking to others about it and getting other people's input, who are also going through the same. And you know, the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to talk about it. We live in the era with the internet, and it's life-changing. You know, go on Twitter, and there's so many, you know, Twitter, Facebook, all LinkedIn. There's so many different communities that you could talk about and reach out to, and you could be talking literally on the opposite side of the world, and you know, get feedback from them instantly, you know, within seconds. And it's only going to get faster. And technology is only getting better as we go. So it's about connecting with the communities, finding what resources they have, and bringing those resources from community to community, and helping those communities swap resources.
Marcus, thank you, Joe. Marcus, in reference to Corinne's question about connecting with self-advocates or groups, could you talk a little bit about that for a moment?
我陪心怡待一下，你听一下这个讲座。
Hold on a second.
I got it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I don't necessarily connect with other self-advocates. I guess I'm my own individual in that aspect. I sometimes, although I sometimes see other people as role models for my life and my career, wait a second.
But let me help you with this a little bit, because of the fact you may not connect with self-advocates, but the first thing you talked about is being connected with the choir. First thing that Joe talked about is being connected with, you know, other groups that he's involved in. I mean, you're out there.
Yeah. The choir. How that began was it's a pretty interesting story. Let me think. Somehow I ended up singing in class, and another student told me I had a good singing voice. And then there was my last semester in college, and in my last semester in college, when I was approaching it, there were few options I could take to get credits and be a full-time student at the Mount. So it was either voice workshop or acting, and naturally, my first choice would be voice workshop, of course, because that was because of that scenario we mentioned. I mentioned earlier about having a good singing voice, and that led to me going into voice workshop, and that led to a lot of good stuff from there, I should say.
Absolutely. And so here we are. Joe and Marcus agree to come here. They share the experiences of their life. Then we talk to Peggy and Lisa from their perspective. And then we talk to Lisa and Jeffrey from his perspective. And I think that, Marcus talks about the role models in his life. I think both of you need to understand how you're a role model in so many other people's lives. And with that, what I'd like to do is open this up for discussion now. So you are muted, and I'm going to ask you if you have a comment or an observation, please share it with us. Just unmute yourself, and we'll spend a few minutes doing this exchange, and then I'm going to ask Lisa to do her traditional exercise with us, and then we will move forward. So please.
Yeah, so Dr. Foss.
Yes, I've been.
Hi, it's been. So yeah, exactly just like I said, Marcus and Joe at least is my role model, because this is what I wish my son can be speaking like that, speaking their own story, speaking out their own decision, speak their own design, what they do there. So I think, my son is turned to 22 next week. Okay, so a couple of days ago, I wrote down a list, my wish for next 5 years. I wish do what. One of them is called self-advocacy, because right now he did not have the ability to talking something. But I realized probably I did something too late right now, or maybe we did not encourage him enough, because this is always two sides of a story. One is he has the ability or design to speak for self. Another one is for us to encourage him, to accept him, not just deny, or criticize him there. Okay, so that is a step I think I did not do enough before. Okay, so right now I'm trying to say, hey, if we give you a choice, if you deny, refused, if you have a good reason, or even you don't have a good reason, we were ready to accept you, because that's the first step. We encourage him to speak for himself. Okay, right? So so it's my really it's my next level of the wish list here. Maybe my son probably not quickly become a self-advocate himself, but at least that's the way we encourage him. So we are at home as parents, we said, hey, that's our position here. We are ready to accept, even sometimes your decision looks like ridiculous, or looks like it's not, not the best position is. But let's talk. Okay, let's talk about this one. If you can change it, that's great. If you cannot change it, we are ready to accept you. Okay, so I think this is for the parent side here. I saw this one here. I saw the issue is both sides. And I wish, my son can be speaking like a Marcus and Joe next time, tell you all everything he wants to tell you. So, yeah,
Well, I have to tell you, since I've been on the path longer, what I say is parenting's never over. And parenting adult children, being a parent for adult children is a lot different than being parent for a younger child. For a younger child, you make decisions, you cross the street, you provide safe. So the example that I use that has helped me make sense of this is the example I use, and I say to my own kids and I say it to my students, being a parent to an adult child is different. And the example that I use is the imagery of walking in the woods. And we're walking on this path. And the fact is that I'm walking ahead of you, not because I'm brighter, funny, or smart. I just got there first. I'm walking ahead of you. And as a result of walking on that path and walking ahead of you, if I saw a low-lying branch, wouldn't you expect me to tell you there's a low-lying branch? You can decide whether or not you want to duck. And that analogy that I use in speaking to myself, it helps me because it's tough. Like you say, you know, your son's making decisions that you may not feel are the right ones, but it's a learning process, you know. And who do I need by my side with the idea of breathing in and breathing out is Lisa Nathan, because there are times you just really have to, you know, exhale with this. So Kaylee, thank you, Ben. Kaylee, you had your hand up as well.
Oh, yes, I did. I just
Please.
wanted to say that I really appreciate Marcus and Joe and the incredible individuals that they are, and the openness and willingness they were able to share their struggles and their rewards and successes. I took away a lot of important themes in the talking. I certainly saw that and I agree with what Peggy and Lisa said about this idea of resiliency, of motivation, of parenting support, as we just heard, of being able to identify the systems that are out there that can work with the individual as they move through their lives and become adults. That's a form of networking that's very important, I think, as the person moves into their own independence. But the things that I emphasized here, what I heard was the resourcefulness, the motivation, the resilience that both Marcus and Joe demonstrated when they shared their stories with us, and that certainly that may have been cultivated within family systems that they were in. And yet I also want to attribute it to them as individuals, who they are as people, that they are really, really good examples for sharing with the folks who are struggling with these issues. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Kaylee. Any other comments from parents, exchanges, people that are participating before I turn this over to Lisa? Well, you know, in your mind's eye, you hope something occurs the way, you hope the outcome is going to be the way you're thinking about it. This is right on. This was wonderful. Joe and Marcus, outstanding. And with that, I'd ask you to help to participate with us as Lisa goes through an example of what our underlying foundation is, which is this idea of mindfulness and meditation. So Lisa, please.
Hi, guys. Well, I have to say, you know, hearing Marcus and Joe as a parent, my son will be 21 in less than 2 weeks and is graduating this year. And I just have to say that I feel so thankful as a parent to hear the future, to hear, you know, this is my transition as my son is graduating, and I feel so nervous. So with that, I'd love to bring us into the here and now, into the present moment where we are right now. And a good way to do that is to connect with our breath and connect with our body to make the two connected. And just take a moment just to take stock and relax. And relax my eyes, relax our eyes, our jaw, our shoulders, and feel where we're connected sitting in our chairs. And feel our feet connected to the ground, the support. And be mindful of the support that we have. from others? You know, what are your supports? I was blown away by Marcus and Joe, and just your profound understanding of being thankful, of being present, and looking, being a hub and being a beacon for others. And to remember always, we can only start from where we are. So wherever you are in this journey, to be thankful, to be grateful. I heard that word, grateful. And to know that we're all in this together. We are all connected. And I really am excited to accept this energy that you guys put out, because this was really wonderful. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Joe, Marcus, thank you. All of you, thank you for participating. And
No problem.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And we will be back.
Thank you for having me too.
Oh, you're welcome, Marcus. You know you're welcome here anytime, as well as you, Joe, both of you, always. So we will be back in 2 weeks. And if there's any questions or anything, please reach out to us. You have Elaine's email as well. You can go to the proactivecaring.org digital resource center, and we are available. So happy Thanksgiving to all, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thanks
Happy
a lot.
holiday.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye now.
Bye.